At this point, Joan of Arc Prime has established herself as one of the strongest cavalry commanders in the game. But in this video, I'm going to break down a little bit more about what we've learned about how this skill works, how this skill works, and how they interact with other commanders on the battlefield. So stick around. What's up, everybody? Psych out here with the Rise of Kingdoms video. We've been talking a lot about Joan of Arc Prime on this channel, trying to understand her skills and how they interact with other commanders. Obviously, we've established that she is a really strong cavalry commander, but I got interested in how this skill works and how it works with the fourth skill, which obviously re-triggers the first skill. How does this rage restore work? How does it work with commanders like William, for example, who also gives a rage bonus on his fourth skill? What we do know from past experience is that active skills should stack with passive skills, so you should be able to get both benefits at once. Whereas with a commander like Trajan, we would not expect that to stack. For example, if we're trying to get if we're getting a rage buff from Trajan, we would not expect that to stack with Joan of Arc skills. Again, past experience tells us that the more powerful active skill will actually override the weaker active skill. So in this case, we would expect to get Trajan's rage rather than Joan of Arc's. I don't actually have a Trajan test in this video, but I do have a test with William, and I want to show you that report. I also want to see how this interacts with a commander like Guan Yu, and we're actually going to see that from a report from a live field fight we had the other day. The other day, we were doing a little scrapping around with our opponents, and here I have XY Joan as my commander pair, and it's actually, I went through a whole bunch of turns of each of these reports. I want to jump down to this one here where we're actually fighting against a Guan Yu and a Scipio, and I've actually gone back and reverse engineered this entire battle to figure out exactly what my rage should be along the way to try to understand how rage is working and how it's stacking up with this particular commander pair. Now, you can see here that I'm actually losing these trades. I actually lost a lot of these trades along the way. That's because, as you'll see in the battle log here, that my Joan of Arc was, my XY Joan of Arc was being surrounded. So let's jump in here. We take a quick look at the troop buffs. We can see that both of our commanders, or all four of the commanders in this fight, are expertised. And I've got some pretty standard, I think, cavalry gear on my march. Nothing with too many special talents or anything like that. Okay, so let's go into the battle log. Now, you'll see right away that we're firing our active skill on turn one. That's actually Joan of Arc's skill on turn one. That is Sacred Banner. That's because I've been engaged in this fight. And the Guan Yu with Scipio is starting to engage in this part of the battle. Now, here's what's interesting. It says the attack triggered 9 rage and 9 rage. I'm not exactly sure what's going on there. What happens when you're actually surrounded? We know that when you're surrounded, you should gain counterattack rage. And in this case, because I'm probably losing the fight, I probably should be gaining 26 rather than the 16 counterattack rage, the sort of base rage that I should be getting. But here I'm getting this 9 rage on this report. And what I'm not sure exactly about is that 9 rage coming from the other attack that's hitting me, or is that also coming from this attack? You would think it's from this attack from the Guan Yu, but the problem is I'm not losing any troops, right? The Guan Yu actually didn't hit me. Actually, my Sacred Banner hit the Guan Yu, and the Guan Yu Scipio, it actually didn't even hit me on this turn. I hit it with AoE. Now, the next turn, it actually engages and starts hitting me. So we've got the things to pay attention to here. We're getting 60 rage from Rejuvenate. Another thing to pay attention here is there were no other rage buffs at the start of this particular one, although you can see that some Guan Yu was hit. This Guan Yu was hit with Hidden Bloodline from my William. I have a Nevsky William in one of the other marches. So now here on turn 2 is where I think things get a little bit more interesting. A couple of things happen. One, we see that Sacred Banner is active. We're gaining 20 rage right here from Joan of Arc's Sacred Banner. We got 2 turns left on that. But at the same time, we are also gaining 50 rage from William I's Scourge of the North. So that's an extra 70 rage there. I went back and did a math on this. I'm rage capping on every turn. We're hitting 220 rage on every single turn for a while here because, first of all, I'm surrounded. I think you can see that somewhere up here. All damage, no, sorry, that's the wrong one. Here it is right here. XY was surrounded. All damage taken increased by 2%. So I've got 2 marches hitting me at this point. You'll see in a little bit that increase goes up because I'm getting hit by many, many more marches. This march is being surrounded, targeted, swarmed, whatever. Okay, so we see that Hidden Bloodline is in effect, and we see that we're getting 9 rage from XY, 9 rage from XY from those 2 talents. We're also the Horn of Fury procs this turn, so we're picking up a lot of rage. We're easily rage capping. And now here's what's something interesting that happens. We see that we are going to activate Warlord's Courage, which is XY's active skill. So that is the previous turn, on turn 2, Joan of Arc fired her skill. On the very next turn, or sorry, on turn 1, Joan of Arc fired her skill, Sacred Banner. And now on turn 2, XY is already firing his active skill. Well, it will fire on turn 3, right? So it's been triggered. We've got enough rage to do that. So here we go. So on this turn, again, we're getting rage from Joan of Arc's skill. The Scourge of the North has worn off. We're not getting any more rage from William. And so we're going to be getting some extra rage from Joan of Arc. And I think that's the main extra rage we're getting here, right? So we're picking up this rage here. And of course, the one thing that doesn't show up is obviously XY's, I forget what the name of it is, whatever his active skill is called, Warlord's Courage, actually did not hit this Guan Yu. You don't see any damage to this Guan Yu, but what you do see is Rejuvenate. So that is XY did fire his skill. It didn't hit this Guan Yu, but he gets the 60 rage for Rejuvenate. So that's showing up here in this report. So now we go on to turn 4. So XY just fired his skill. What we would expect is a turn of downtime here on turn 4. And then we would expect Joan of Arc Prime to fire her skill on turn 5. And in fact, that is exactly what we see here. She fires Sacred Banner again here on turn 5. Now, I want to point out a couple of things here. One, we have picked back up Scourge of the North. So William's rage buff is now back into effect. So we're picking up another 50 rage for another couple of turns here. The Joan of Arc rage has now worn off. We've gotten our 3 turns of the 20 rage from Joan of Arc at this point. But now we are going to be firing Sacred Banner. And so there you see we fire Sacred Banner. We're going to be picking up rage from Rejuvenate right there. We didn't pick up, I don't think, any other rage buffs yet, just our normal rage buffs there. And so that's firing Sacred Banner on turn 5. And now we go into turn 6, where we should be getting that rage buff again from Joan of Arc. So we're getting rage from William, Scourge of the North, but we should also be getting rage from Joan of Arc here as well. And that's what I'm kind of not seeing here. And I'm not exactly sure why that is the case. Am I missing something? Is the Joan of Arc buff here? Because I just don't see that buff hitting this time. And so that's kind of interesting, right? So this time I am getting that William buff, but right, I mean, we fired Sacred Banner here, right? So we should be getting that Sacred Banner buff, that 20 rage per turn here. And I just don't see that happening here on turn 6. So we get the buff from William, but we're not getting the buff from Joan of Arc. So I'm not exactly sure what's going on there, unless I just am not seeing it here in the report, and I'm sort of having report blindness. I don't see that Joan of Arc buff being triggered on that turn 6. Now, when we jump over to do turn 7, we should be getting, there's the William buff, the Scourge of the North. And what I don't know is if it's actually not in effect because, and this is one of the things that caught my attention here, is that if you notice, Guan Yu cast his skill, Saint of War, on the previous turn, and that actually has a silence, and that is actually here in the report. Let me see if I can find it. Yeah, there it is right here, saying Yu troops cannot use active skills due to the silence effect caused by Guan Yu. And so that's what got me thinking maybe Guan Yu is actually shutting down that active skill from Joan of Arc, right? We feel like we should be getting an active skill from Sacred Banner. We should be getting that rage buff. We should be getting that all damage buff. But I think it's actually silenced in this case by Guan Yu's skill, which is really interesting. So it's not just silencing the skill itself, but it's silencing the effects, right? Because it fired on this turn, right? So we actually got Sacred Banner off at the same time Guan Yu fired Saint of the War, but we're not getting those subsequent turn effects, which I think is really interesting. And then if we go to turn 7, the same thing, right? We're still getting that William buff, which is a passive skill, but we're not getting that active, we're not getting any of those active skill buffs from Joan of Arc's Sacred Banner, like you would think we would be getting. And then we go on again, turn 8. I think we're still silenced here on turn 8, if I remember correctly. We do have a Ring of Doom proc, which is kind of interesting, but I'm pretty sure somewhere in here, yeah, XY troops cannot use active skills. We have one more turn left of Saint of War, keeping us from using active skills. And we're gaining a lot of rage, by the way, this whole time. I haven't shown all the rage, but we're picking up a lot of rage here. Again, once this is the last turn where we can't use our active skills. And so again, there's no buff from Joan of Arc going on here. Still can't use our active skills. We get a Horn of Fury proc on this turn. Now we should be able to proc our skill on this turn, and you can see that there's really nothing here except for whatever reason the enemy broke contact on this turn. I'm not exactly sure what happened, but you can see that we now that Saint of War effect, that silence has gone away, we've got enough rage. Zhang Yu is going to launch Warlord's Courage, and on the next turn it actually misses again. I think this Guan Yu must have been behind me or something, because it actually misses doesn't hit the Guan Yu again. We got a Horn proc. We also got, where does it show it here? Yeah, there's our Rejuvenate. So we got the rage from Rejuvenate, but again, Guan Yu is going to cast Saint of War again. And this is where I think, again, the report gets quite interesting, because XY has just now procced his skill. So what we should expect is a second of downtime on turn 12. And then on turn 13, we should see Sacred Banner cast from Joan of Arc. And what we get here on this turn 12 is we get, again, Guan Yu using his Saint of War and silencing me. So now we go to turn 13, and let's see where we can find it here. There it is. Cannot use active skills. So now I'm silenced again. Joan of Arc wanting to use her skill, can't use her skill. She's silenced again. Now his Scipio fires his skill. Again, I'm still silenced on this turn. And now we go to turn 15, and I think I'm still silenced. I think this is the last turn. Yes, this is the last turn of that silence. And what we should see is Sacred Banner being cast. That's what I would expect to see on turn 16, but actually we don't, right? So I'm not exactly sure what is going on. I would have thought Sacred Banner would have been cast this turn, but I don't see it, right? So I'm not exactly sure why. Did it not say it was going to be cast? Was it supposed to be cast? Did it get canceled? It's a little bit confusing to me why that didn't happen, right? So we get Saint of War cast. I'm silenced on turn 13. Okay, but right before that Saint of War was cast, I actually had... Right, I just cast my skill. XY just cast the skill. So that should mean Joan of Arc's should be 1 second of downtime. Joan of Arc should be next. Right, at the bottom of this report, yeah, see, it even says it right there, is going to cast Sacred Banner. So there it is. But before she can cast Sacred Banner, Guan Yu silences, right? So, okay, we're silenced. We're silenced. We should be silenced on this one more turn, right? So this should be the last turn of the silence. And so what I would expect is that Sacred Banner would be cast here on turn 16, now that I'm no longer silenced, right? There's no longer any silence. And let's come down here, and it says it's going to activate the skill Sacred Banner again. Okay, so maybe it's being reprocced, it's being re-triggered. Okay, so it actually has this extra turn of delay there on that Sacred Banner. Okay, so now Sacred Banner actually does get cast this turn. And we pick up some rage, we get a Horn proc. And what we should see, right, we get Rejuvenate because we cast the skill. What we should see is Joan of Arc's effect go into effect again on this turn, now that we're no longer silenced, right? So let's take a look here. Do we see that Joan of Arc effect? Where is it? Let's see. It should be here because we cast Sacred Banner, but why don't I see that rage? It should be right. Cast Sacred Banner, procs all these skills. What we should see on turn 18 is all of those Joan of Arc effects, but I don't see them here. And I'm not exactly sure why that's the case. What I should see are those boosts for Joan of Arc. I should see the extra damage. I should see I should see anything related to Sacred Banner here. I should see the extra rage gain, but I don't see that here. And I'm not exactly sure why that is. Is it because it's the second cast of Sacred Banner when it should have been the first cast? Don't really know. But then XY casts his skill, Warlord's Courage at the end of, right? Or he's got enough rage gain that he's going to cast it. So it actually ended up not mattering, I guess, in some respects, but it's still a little weird that it didn't show up in the report, right? So XY casts Warlord of Courage. or he's going to cast it here on this turn. So there, he casts it. Again, we get Rage from Rejuvenate, and we should be back on a sort of a regular skill cycle all of a sudden here. And that's exactly what we see, right? So we've got a 1 second of downtime. Joan of Arc is going to cast Sacred Banner. She casts Sacred Banner, and unfortunately, the fight ends here before we can actually see what would happen on the next turn. But what should happen here on this turn is we should be picking up that Rage again from Joan of Arc. It's not actually here. I don't actually see it. I think the enemy got eliminated or just ran away or something like that. I don't exactly know what happened on this last turn. Yeah, they still had troops left, so I'm not exactly sure why they disconnected. But anyway, the point here is that there's a couple of things that we can learn from this. One is that Joan of Arc's active skill does seem to stack with William's passive skill. You can get Rage from both, which has implications for how you're setting up your marches, right? So if you have Joan of Arc behind an XY and you have a Nevsky with a William, you're going to be picking up a lot of rage between the Joan of Arc, between the William, between XY's reduced rage requirement. And then if you have a Horn of Fury on your XY, if you have things like Feral Nature, which none of that never procced here, but if you have a build on your XY that looks like something like this one here, where you've got a lot of Feral Nature, you're going to be, and then of course you've got this talent and you've got this talent, you're going to be proccing your skills. You're going to be rage capping a whole heck of a lot with this setup. In addition to the fact that if you're surrounded, like I was in this case, you're going to be getting extra rage from those counterattacks as well. So the point here is that you might really want to think about whether or not this setup makes sense. It may be worth taking some points out of Feral Nature to counteract that, or basically you're never really going to get much out of this because it seems like you're going to be rage capping a lot, particularly if your XY is focused a lot on the field. Now, where would you put those points? I have had builds where you come out here and you get Buckler Shield. That might be a reasonable thing to do. You can also maybe get up and get some points in Rallying Cry, depending on how many points you take out of where in the skill tree. So that's one of the big lessons here. The other big lesson that I think I learned from this fight and looking through in great detail these battle reports is that Guan Yu silence is even more powerful than I thought. It doesn't just stop you from, or delay you from using your active skill. It actually shuts down those effects for multiple turns. And I guess if those effects wear off, you actually never get them. You'll never actually get that effect. If the skill cycle starts over, you'll actually never get those effects. That's what it looked like we were seeing in those reports. So yeah, I mean, that means Guan Yu silence is really, really powerful. 3 seconds is a long time in these battles, and it can really throw off that skill cycle, right? What looked like a really powerful skill cycle going for my XY Joan really got shut down quite a bit by that Guan Yu. So something to keep in mind when you are deciding which commanders to work on in the Season of Conquest, right? We know Joan of Arc Prime is super powerful, but I think this is why Guan Yu has really had a long-lasting effect. That unique effect of a 3-second silence can really disrupt the skill cycle, even on rage machines like XY with the Joan, or with a William, or with a Trajan nearby, Horn of Fury on them. It can really be disrupted by Guan Yu, and I think that's why Guan Yu remains a very powerful commander in the Season of Conquest. All right, that's it for this video. I hope you learned a little bit more about Rage and how it works with Joan of Arc and how it works with William. If you did learn something, give this video a like. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel, and I will see you all in the next one.